Barry owns up. On a fine sunny morning when you are able to go high up in the mountains, you can also see Barry and Ryan pulling goods and passengers around the Harwick branch line. And Barry was also proud of happily spending time with his old friend Arthur, who was originally named Clarence before Arthur first came to Sodor. Arthur was happy to have a new name. He always said it was better than being called Clarence. One day, Barry was talking to Arthur about the time Ryan had saved him from Scrap. If it wasn't for Ryan, he said, I would have been caught in the act. He would say, I am so happy to be working on the Fat Controllers Railway, even though I didn't know Sodor even existed at the time, he would say. Until that night at Tidmouth Sheds, all the other engines wanted to know about Barry's adventures. Amazing, said Edward. Barry, said James, you're the greatest. And good gracious, said Emily. But Stanley was confused. What does that mean? He asked. It means he's very clever, whispered Boko. Here's to a great example of us all, said James cheerfully. But unfortunately that went to Barry's smoke box, and it made him so silly. Edward thinks I'm amazing, he said. Why, yes, I am. The other railway wanted to scrap Barry, but he was able to escape from many different scrapyards before his arrival on Sodor. Until some day later, Barry arrived at Knapford Sheds where the Fat Controller was waiting. He had a meeting with him. You are doing well. Now you must learn how to look after trucks. Now every wise engine knows that you cannot trust trucks. The other engines all tried to warn Barry, but he would not listen. Not only that Barry wouldn't listen, he was still complaining as usual to the other engines. You think I can't manage, he said. I know everything. Edward thinks I'm amazing, and I also don't know about you lot, but James thinks I'm a great example to us big engines, he boasted. Those trucks can be trouble, said Arthur. You might have to let the young engine learn from himself, Arthur, said Mooshie. It's no use arguing with him. A few hours after, Barry had just taken some trucks from the quarry full of slate and stones. He dropped them at the station and puffed off to the water tower to have a drink. Then he came back the next hour. The trucks were also comfortable, but not for long. What right has he got to show his tender at us? We want Mooshie, or Ryan, or Arthur. Push hard on, shouted Barry and puffed away with the trucks. That's no way for an engine to treat us like that, whispered the trucks. But unfortunately, Barry didn't hear. All was going well until the trucks began giving Barry a rough ride. On, they cried. Barry's driver tried to slam on Barry's brakes, but they were useless against the trucks. Faster, faster went the trucks, and then the trucks were going on and on. Over there was Arthur on the turntable trying to have a rest at the sheds. For a change of plan, Arthur decided to sleep at a siding outside the sheds and thought it was the perfect resting spot. The trucks went on until they were exhausted. I'm winning, thought Barry, but it was too late. Then it happened. The duel was over, and Barry, looking embarrassed and unamused, with his had his tender dipped on the turntable well. What? Hello, Barry, said Arthur. Are you being a good gracious? I'm sorry, but we don't like this sort of surprise. Now James, Henry, Gordon and Edward will miss their turn on the turntable. Poor Barry looked unamused and unhappy. Until that evening, Barry's tender was lifted carefully and safely with the breakdown train out of the turntable well, and the Fat Controller was not amused when he was hearing Barry's side of the story. I'm sorry, sir, he said. I should have listened to Arthur's advice, he said. I really am a silly engine, sir, he said. I don't feel good gracious or whatever it was the other engines say. The Fat Controller looked sternly at Barry. Very well then, said the Fat Controller. Now you know the damage trucks can do, he said. I think I look like a heap of scrap, sir, interrupted Barry. The Fat Controller laughed. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, I don't think so. But your tender needs to go to the works to be mended. Moments after, Ryan had heard the news and was feeling very sorry to see Barry go. The branch line won't be the same without you, he called to Barry. Come back soon. I hope you'll come back soon. And of course, Barry did come back. He was mended and repainted, and his paint was shining in the glassy sun. But he became a very wiser engine back then, and took care never to let the trucks defeat him again.